Hello, everyone. We've got big news. As you know, the only way that you can know that you've made a fine piece of art is by getting a lot of views on the internet. So, we started doing some research, crunching numbers, handing out surveys, spying on the competition, and we've come to a conclusion.
PRPR needs to go through a bit of restructuring. We are no longer going to be doing podcasts. Instead, we'll be switching over to the art that the YouTube community, by the view count, has made it obvious that they love and appreciate.
We will from now on be making cringe compilations, Vine compilations with a sexy thumbnail for maximum clickbait, Call of Duty no-scope headshot Doritos compilations.
In addition to that, Thug Life compilations and fail compilations and a whole bunch of other bullshit. This is the most appreciated form of art, and we feel it'll satisfy us creatively and as human beings.
Gotcha, bitches. This is PlayRust Public Radio. Alright, so we've got everybody in the room right now. We've got Argyle Alligator, Bugs, Phaedo, and of course me and Drostin. Say hello, everybody.
Hello.
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 Wonderful. It's good to have you all here. We are, of course, talking about the big, everlasting KOS debate. It's always been a debate, but it's been brought to the forefront of the Reddit and Rust and general community again recently, and we thought it's time to bring in some of the pillars, public figures of the community, and ask them what their take on it is, on not just KOSing nakeds or non-nakeds, but PvP in general. And I guess we'll just throw the question out there. What do you guys think about killing on site in PvP? Anyone's free to go first.
Well, I'll jump in here. Basically, this is Bugs. I think it is an intricate part of the game. And so trying to limit it or instill rules has never really landed for me. I actually tried it originally, and we started a legacy server. It wasn't nearly as popular. It was before we had the website and everything. And we tried to do a PvP pants rule where, we thought, you want to go out and harvest and you don't want to get killed. So maybe if you don't wear pants, you can go out and harvest. And then if you want to go PvP, you can put pants on. And then when you got your big boy pants on, you're ready to PvP. We tried that out for a bit. It was a mess. It just did not work. And it's not, at the end of the day, it's not what the game is about. And from my vantage point, it's a sandbox game where you can do whatever is there for you to do. And so, it sucks sometimes to get killed on sight. But if that level of danger wasn't there, you wouldn't have the same level of adrenaline going on when you get into an instance like that. It just wouldn't be available.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yep. Cutting wood would be just cutting wood without the maniac in the valley next to you.
Yeah,
It'd
there's
be a
nothing to
harvest
lose.
Yeah, it'd be Minecraft.
The only system I've seen that actually worked a little bit to, on the KOS thing is I played on a server, I think it was Legacy actually, where during the week PvP was off, rating was off. Oh, no, sorry, rating was off. There was still PvP. But once the weekend rolled around, it was like the fucking purge, and you basically spent the week preparing for the weekend of just absolute hell.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think with that, though, it adds too much predictability to it. And I think, like Bug said, some of the uncertainty of Rust is where the magic is. So not knowing when you're going to get raided, not being able to predict it's going to be Saturday night, it's going to be Sunday, but kind of sort of that just anxiety, even paranoia playing the game for me is, as odd as that sounds, it's actually an intriguing part of it, where if you go out and you're in the woods, like, you could die at any minute. And it's like with great risk comes great reward. So when you go out and get that great yield of ore and you're pushing yourself to go a little bit, farther, and then you're, risking more. That's where the magic is. And I think that anything done to limit that for me is a big turnoff. I know there's modded servers with different rule sets, different safe zones. My background is I'm a big vanilla Rust player. That's where I played in Legacy, and that's where I continue to sort of gravitate towards. But I think that, any system they put in place to sort of neutralize that is very, very difficult. So people have talked about, safe zones on beaches, or systems where if you're a player who kills a lot of players, you're flagged differently or something like that. And I don't think that would really be overall beneficial to the game.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I was about to ask what you thought about it. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with that statement about that element of danger adding to the magic of the game, because as a person who ends up dying a lot, especially on site, it sucks, but I feel like if I was on a PvE server and I'm going around having all these interactions with different players that turn out to be not hostile, it would make them less genuine and less exciting, because in a world that's filled with the potential of hostility, it makes it that much more interesting when you find people that are willing to randomly join you or let you in their house or engage in you in ways that are less than orthodox or the way that the game is originally intended to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought about that, but definitely, that in a world of crazy people, if someone's nice, they're actually nice, and they're not, secretly a dick waiting to, I don't know, steal your stuff when your back is turned, because they can actually shoot you in the head. What do you guys think about?
What do we think about what?
Say again? I'm sorry?
I think you cut out.
Oh, did I? Hello? Are we there?
No,
Hello?
we
can hear
he's
you.
fine.
Yep,
Oh,
I
okay.
heard you.
On our end.
All right.
I think it's you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Weird things happen sometimes, but we've talked about PvP in general, but what about killing naked? That's a big thing that people like to complain about is, why'd you kill me? I'm just naked, what's your thoughts on that? Because we all know I can be naked and have an AK, hiding inside any of my crevices. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that the potential that a naked might not be exactly a naked is always something that people are nervous about, because I know there's been plenty of videos and streamers who have that trolling where they're just like, hey, I'm a guy, could you just give me some food? I'm hungry out here. The guy opens the door, whips out an AK, kills everybody inside, and he's like, haha, those idiots. And I think everyone's like, well, that ain't gonna be me. I'm shooting on sight. So I think a lot of trust issues come from that. But that just comes with the territory when it comes to survival games, because I know even in like DayZ or anything else that has this premise to it, there's always that element and issue of mistrust that everybody has, because you got stuff and everybody wants your stuff and you don't know when you're going to get hit. So that's just something I feel that comes with the territory and adds to the interestingness and ways that people can interact in this game, because it can turn into a giant social experiment with that element to it, and I think it just adds to the more intrigue that Rust has, or games of this nature.
Definitely. One of the first games I played like this was DayZ, like you mentioned, the standalone. We all know DayZ's current state and that it's not really that fun anymore, but when I first played it, it blew me away because I'd never played anything like this. I can choose to shoot this guy. I could choose to make friends with this guy. I could try to rob him without killing it. Anything like that. And to me, what blew me away about that was, like you said, that it kind of felt like a big social experiment, seeing how people would act if they were actually put in some sort of survival situation. Now, I know it's just a video game, and of course, I don't want any kind of realistic video game, because if it were truly realistic, that'd be terrible. But you're right. There's a magic that comes with not knowing what this person is going to do to you, and whether this naked is actually going to attack you. What do you think about nakeds, Phaedo? Or bugs? Bugs, you haven't talked.
Well, I think that, and I agree with Argyle, and that the human interaction, the social dynamic of this game is really what makes it such a great game. It's people can do whatever they want to do, and they can be whoever they want to be. And even though it is just a video game, you are representing a real person in a sense, and you're taking on a character, and having that freedom, I think, is really where the magic comes in. With regards to nakeds, though, and whether to trust them or not, I think one thing I'd like to see in the game would be the ability to see what people have equipped on their hotbar on their world model person. So if the person does have an AK, they couldn't be carrying it around without us seeing it. We could see that they got a spear back there, a hatchet, and a pipe shotgun or something, And with the addition of that, you could actually really see if someone is truly naked and they just have a rock and a torch. And that would, I think, open up a lot of, possibility for trust and for earning trust, as opposed to right now where it's kind of like, well, I've been screwed over by a naked before who popped off, out of nowhere and killed me. So I'm just going to kill every naked on site because I don't want to lose my stuff.
Yeah. What about you, Phaedo? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bugs' idea of being able to see what a player has equipped, I think, is essential to the game, at least in terms of what's on their hotbar. I mean, if you have an AK, it should be slung over your back. If you have something that could fit on your belt, like a hatchet, be hanging off your side. I think that is, definitely a logical progression, and I hope to see that. I just kind of want to echo what they said, though, about it being sort of this grand social experiment. And to me, that's what Rust is. Beyond the PvP, beyond everything else, it is this sort of platform where they haven't told us we have to kill each other. We have the tools there to do that. And on the, at the other end of the computer, there is a person. So there's somebody who worked very hard to acquire materials to build that house or to do whatever it is they're doing in the game. So when you are killing somebody or raiding somebody, you are in a sense affecting them. You're affecting perhaps their mood. They might go into work angry or take it out on their girlfriend. You never know. I mean, it's a game where people's emotions run very, very hot, especially on vanilla servers. But Rust is one of those games where it is this grand social experiment, and you're going to see things in the future in terms of like older sociological and psychological studies like the Milgram experiment or the Stanford prison experiment. They're starting to replicate those in the digital realm because we're wired so much now, and that's how we're interacting more than we are face to face. So you're going to see things like that kind of playing out in a digital environment, and Rust is a perfect game to kind of replicate some of those same experiments. I mean, people don't have to take on these roles, but with regard to killing nakeds, I mean, I think there's this assumption that, being naked equates to innocence or something, and that's, not necessarily the case. I think, the concept of being naked in Rust in general is really an interesting design decision. The fact that they put that in is really ahead of its time. But I don't want to digress too much. But in terms of killing nakeds, it's I don't think anything should be put in place to allow you not to do it. I think what Bug said is a perfect sort of happy middle ground to be able to see kind of what they might have on their at least their belt, and that would be a step in the right direction.
Definitely. I think there'd still be the little bit of mistrust because if it was only your hotbar, you could technically, drag it out of your inventory onto your back or onto your hotbar and then just, whip it out and shoot people. But I love that idea. I've seen it mentioned before, but it was always in the form of like someone suggesting a backpack that gets bigger as you have more stuff.
I love that suggestion,
something like
by
that.
the way.
The backpack?
Yeah, the backpack that like grows on your back.
The backpack's too ambiguous, though. It's not clear enough.
Silly.
Yeah.
I mean, it achieves what it needs to achieve, but it's kind of goofy.
It's a different.
You could have both mechanics, though. I mean, H1Z1 does both.
Do
right?
they?
Yeah, H1Z1 has a backpack that is shown on the player's back, as well as whatever items are equipped on the hotbar are shown on your player as well, and it can be anything. It's grenades, pistols, melee weapons, rifles. You'll see it on the guy, so you'll know exactly what they have.
Well, I think, too, it opens up an interesting design decision, too, because so say you're naked and you have an AK, but it has no ammo in it. You could essentially go up and intimidate other nakeds and be like, don't make me take this off my back. And so it creates those interesting emergent gameplay aspects that I think would really lend itself well to sort of more of a dynamic interaction, too.
Yeah, that was my go-to in DayZ if I was actually unarmed, was just find a little pistol and try and hold people up with it and hope they had ammo for my pistol on them.
Or use like a flashlight because you hold it like a gun to hold people up.
I forgot about that. It looks like you have a gun from a distance because they hold the flashlight like a pistol, like pistol grip and everything. You could trick people from afar. That was less effective though. But should there be along the lines of PvP and showing items and things about your character that you play visually on you? Should there be, excuse me, should there be some sort of visual cue that you're a violent player? Like maybe not the name over your head is bright red or something, but something kind of subtle, like I don't know, tattoos come to mind, or like little scars on you or something. Do you think something like that you couldn't spot from across the map, would that be beneficial to play, or what do you guys think about that?
I think that would add an interesting element. I've always wanted something in Rust where like they have all these pieces that you can collect from when you kill players, like skulls, bones, meat, whatever. I've always wanted buildings and wearable gear to be crafted from skulls and other player items, so that you could run by a building and it has like a wall made out of skulls or bone, and you're like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't come by this house because it's made of bones, and this guy had to kill a lot of players to make this wall. Or you see a guy just like decked out in like human meat, and you're like, well, we know that guy's killed a lot of people. So I always thought it would be interesting if there was those kind of items in the game, just to add an element. And I know people would pursue them. It would definitely add to a lot more killing on sight, but I mean that's just kind of how the game goes. I don't know. As far as killing nakeds though, I feel like I've seen a lot more naked on naked violence than anything else, because when you talk about kill on sight, it's always a connotation that one of those people who kills on sight has a gun. I've been killed on sight plenty of times with a rock or a torch. So that's just as viable. The beach is as much as a bloodbath without people coming in with guns, and it gets out of control. And I think the suggestion of putting items on the player would definitely deter some of that instant violence. But I think that the biggest thing, if you do want to leave PvP in and direct people to be cooperative and less killing on sight, you need a threat that the game presents itself. I've always wanted a major PvE thing that people need to get together to take down. And I know the helicopters have recently come into the game, and that's definitely something that people can work towards to fight. But I think it needs to be something on the land, so people can see it from far away and then go after it together as a team and use a coordinated effort. Because the helicopter just comes out of nowhere and will just murder people and be on its way.
Yeah.
I would love to see like just a giant troll, like that movie Troll Hunter, that just like rampages slowly through the landscape.
Right.
Something, anything.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about your what's the fucking thing you have a heart on for, Justin? The
Caretaker?
Yeah, the caretaker.
Oh yeah, the caretaker.
I don't want to talk about the fucking caretaker anymore. They've been cock teasing us about it for a year and a half.
It was one
now.
piece of concept art that blew up ridiculously.
Yeah, but they keep putting it in community updates like once a month. Like, hey, look at what people have done with the caretaker this week. Just showing it to you. Bye, guys.
But wasn't the caretaker done by a fan anyway? It wasn't even done by the
it was
actual
never
devs.
it was never a dev thing.
No.
Yeah.
It just kind of cock teases Drosten and he gets mad about it.
They keep showing it like every month in the fucking community update, and
You always get so sad when we talk about it.
I just want them to make it. Like everybody wants it.
I think they're cautious to put it in because as much as Rust is this game that players create in itself, there actually is some kind of a lore to Rust, but we really don't know what the story is of why everybody's on this large desolate plain with these fragments of a past world. We don't know what happened. We don't know where we are. We don't even know the timeline or what's going on. We just know that it was some kind of modern-ish society and people still are using aircraft for whatever reason. And that I think if these crazy ancient robots are thrown into the mix, it's going to make things a lot more confusing or go outside of Gary's vision of what the story of Rust actually is. So I think that's why they're a little hesitant to introduce something like that.
I love the idea.
Skunk and I
were you about to talk about
week.
the prison thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skunk and I were talking last time we recorded an episode, and then my computer died. That I said I think we're just on some fucking prison island. They just take people who are like, you know, felony offenders, and just dumping them on this island that maybe like a reactor blew up or something and it's kind of uninhabitable. So they just dump a whole bunch of prisoners, which is why we have crazed murderers and just kind of normal people who may have just laundered money. And the outside world is just ticking along just fine. We're just not allowed to leave. That's why we have aircraft dropping things for us to kill each other with. We're probably on some reality TV show at this point.
Well, the interesting thing there is that the Hapis Island, that name is derived from the Turkish word for prison.
Oh.
Whoa.
No fucking shit.
Wow.
Yeah, so-
we're uncovering the story of Rust.
And the new
Oh my
one,
God.
the new one, Savis, actually is translated apparently to Battle Island.
Oh, shit.
Which actually makes a lot of sense given the gameplay.
Yeah. Holy
So
shit.
I'm right.
So maybe
Wow.
I
was right.
Maybe that is, a piece of this.
It would explain the shaved heads.
Yeah.
It would. It would.
That's my personal headcanon. I refuse to accept anything else until it's explicitly stated. But I love that means prison. But then that also leaves a lot of possibilities for back to what we were talking about, for a PvE event, because there could be, we don't really know much about the outside world, so it could be a place where we do have modern giant murder robots in the form of caretakers that they could just drop on the island, like, well, the prisons are over inhabited, this island is now over inhabited, time to cull the herds a little bit, drop a robot in there.
Yeah.
What
So
if
there's
like
hope, Justin.
what if a PvE threat was just a bunch of tourists coming with like machine guns?
That might be what the
rich
helicopter
people.
is.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
you're
maybe that's
right.
rich
people
Most
hunting.
dangerous game kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was some concept art on the old Trello site that they had, and I believe it was in-house art. I mean, Bugs can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like some of the art that was coming out of there were concepts, things to do with, there was like this mushroom type monster that looked like some type of aberration. There were like these radiated mutant bears, and I think maybe even mutants themselves too. So I think they do have sort of some concepts for the PvE part. I think the helicopter was absolutely awesome, and I've been sort of studying that and watching it evolve on Rustopia. But I did notice that players have found ways to kind of exploit it a little bit too, and take it down a little bit too quickly. But I think they do have some concepts for PvE, and it seems to fit into sort of this post-apocalyptic sort of, like, a lot of it had to do with radiation. They took the zombies out in Legacy, so we know they want to differentiate themselves from being a zombie game. But I think the biggest thing, that they're going to probably roll that out slowly, because right now, I mean, the animals don't function that well. They get stuck on rocks very easily. So to put in something that's going to be a PvE threat, it really needs to, a lot of work goes on behind the scenes, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to bring up the rat animal idea. I frankly don't care what the PvE threat is as long as there is one.
Exactly.
And I think we all can agree that there isn't enough of one. The helicopter is a nice step in the right direction, but it's only a certain level. It's not. It doesn't. Someone with a spear has no chance against it, and no potential gain of. Rust is about naked people, and so we need some PvE threats that are worse than just a wolf, that a couple nakeds are inclined to take on because there's loot to get out of it. And I think the rat animal threat is probably the most logical and probably what they're going to do as
Absolutely.
far as putting in. But Phaedo, you hit the nail on the head. If you look at the animals right now, the AI engine is garbage for the game, unfortunately. I mean, they run up cliff faces like crazy. They glitch around a lot of times. It needs a lot of work. So I think it's understandable that they didn't just paint a couple of them red and put backpacks on them to drop and plop them in there, because the whole AI system needs a rework, I think, before they can really introduce a threat of that level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the helicopter is a good exploration of just AI programming to begin with, because it has steps that it follows and whatnot. So I think it's probably a really good step in that direction.
Yeah.
For sure. It's also fucking terrifying.
It is. And awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
at night
it's
especially.
awesome.
Great. I love
How
it.
cool is that?
I was playing on the PlayRust public server, the now official Reddit server, whatever the official name of it is now, and I was like building up north, doing a little thing, somehow managed to build like a decent little base on my own without dying. And I just like stopped because I hear a noise and I thought it was an airdrop. And I like look around and I realize it's not the plane noise, it's more of a whoop, 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 whoop. And I'm like, fuck, because it was
It's
like
ominous,
the day,
yeah.
it was the day I think that was the first time it showed up on the server. And so I like blast in chat, like, heli up north, blah, blah, and start freaking out and finally see it like come out of the fog up, up top mountains and like cruise over to the east of me. And it was terrifying. I love the heli. I absolutely agree. It's a great step in the right direction for a PvE and giving you something else to shoot besides the naked guy across the street.
Yeah, and I think that brings it all back to the original context of this conversation, which is, killing on sight and killing nakeds and PvP in general. As much as I think PvP can be exhilarating and exciting, I love the thing that I love about Rust. If I just want to shoot someone, I'll play Counter-Strike, I'll
Right.
play
Yeah.
GTA.
Well, if you're any good at Counter-Strike, I suck. I will not be shooting your buddy in that game.
Fair enough, yeah. But, this game, it appeals to me because of the social dynamics. And so to the extent that we can interject things into the game that encourage that social dynamic, not necessarily hinder people from killing people on site if that's what they want to do, but PvE elements always strike me as something that will encourage people to work together in a way that really speaks to the heart of what I love about the game at its core anyway.
Absolutely. I think the magic, is sometimes you don't have to pull the trigger, whereas in Counter-Strike, that's all you really have to do. But the most rewarding experiences in Rust for me have been times where I haven't killed somebody on site, but I've let them come up and kind of interact with me in whatever way. So I think absolutely that's really where the magic is. So I concur.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think
So I get-
the biggest problem we had before this helicopter came around in terms of killing on sight was there just wasn't anything else to shoot at. So why not shoot at the nakeds or each other,
Exactly.
Like that's the only time that I really have gone and started being really KOS is when I have a gun and I haven't used it since like, I don't know, they fixed the bolt action sights or they added in the free aiming or dead zone, whatever you want to call it. I'll just go on a little naked murder spree because I need some target practice, And if I have a chest full of AKs at some point, I want to shoot something, So I'm going to start killing people.
Yeah.
So having something else to shoot at, like a helicopter, is good. I like it. So I guess we're all kind of on the same page for the most part. It seems like PvE is an essential option of survival games. On any of them, not just Rust. I think this conversation expands beyond Rust and into all survival games that have this option. We all seem to be on the same page, huh?
I just want to add one little thing. It appears like in games to be human nature to want to like kill each other. The very first like MMO, like before Ultima Online even, like the very first, they had like I think like maybe a couple thousand people playing it, and they added in the ability to kill one another. And when they did that, everyone started fucking murdering each other. It was a fucking bloodbath. But they got 10 times as many people to sign up to the game just from that one decision.
So you're saying we're all kind of fucked up on the inside? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So it's always been around. PvP's always been around. It's always going to be a part of the game.
Well, I think, I don't know what everybody's background is, but I come out of sort of my experience with PvP comes out of a game called Ultima Online, which is a really interesting sort of case study with it all. But UO, when it first came out in 98, 99, it had mostly open world PvP, much like Rust. There were towns that were safe zones, but when you left the town, it was like the Wild West. And players had to actually interact with one another to survive those lands. So if there were player killers out there, you had to kind of band with other players and have them help you get to a mine where you needed to get ore. But over the course of the progression of Ultima Online, the devs tried to appease different play styles a little bit too much, and they took the PvP, that sort of free open world PvP out of it. You had to flag players if they wanted to engage in PvP, and then ultimately they made a PvP world and a PvE world, and it fragmented the community. It totally destroyed the game. So that is something too that I think is very interesting to talk about, is that, with Rust, with its current state of PvP, are there any things they can do to tweak it? But if they were to tweak it or put too many systems in place, it essentially breaks that freedom that we're talking about, which is the freedom to be able to kill somebody or let somebody live. I think is a really important, aspect.
For sure. I think it really, you really, yeah. You summed it up perfectly. If they do too much to appease PvE people, it's going to end up just like Ultima Online, which I never played, but Drustin tells me about it all the time.
Oh yeah, it's pretty great for a while.
And just end it. Like it'll fragment it. And I think a lot of the people that complain about PvP being crazy maybe are playing on the wrong server. I think that's a very important part of it too, is you do have to find a good community. A lot of them, I can't remember who said this, but I love the way they said it, that a lot of servers are just PvP and raid porn at this point. That might have been Ruigi. I don't know. I can't remember. Something on Twitter said that. But that sums it up perfectly. A lot of servers are pretty much just everyone dying, everyone shooting each other, and that's gonna make you hate the game if that's not really your thing. But like,
well, I think it speaks like what Bugs was saying, though, in particular about it's kind of all right now people have to do, before the helicopter, and the helicopter is something, but it's not enough. But raiding is the most visceral, exciting aspect to Rust. I mean, it's really one of the times your heart gets pumping. Like, people are blowing into your base.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not. I think if there were more PvE elements, some of that stuff it would naturally sort of find a happy medium. If there was some credible threats, players had to work together, this raiding still would be a big part of it, but it wouldn't be nearly as pronounced. It's kind of all they have to do right now. It would get very stale. I mean, people who play on servers that are just, I don't even know how they can call it PvE right now, because there's not really a PvE threat, but on a no PvP server, I mean, shit, that must get stale. I mean, I don't know,
Players versus boars.
Yeah.
That's what
People
it is right now.
people on those servers seem to find ways to fuck each other over, and then everybody gets all pissy and moany because the guy
that's just
did
even
this.
more passive aggressive.
Well, maybe if you allowed PvP, you'd be able to deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
Ark has a huge problem with that.
When I played Legacy way back when I first started playing Rust, we played on a regular server and we were getting killed all the time because those servers were full and people were running and the map was much smaller than it was today. So we went to a PvE server just to learn the game for a couple days, and everybody on there was really nice, but we were getting so bored after we built these massive towers and stocked up all this stuff, and we didn't have anything to kill or do. So what we did was we just made a bunch of C4 and we destroyed their entire town that they had, and then we left because there was nothing else for us to do. We ran out of stuff. They were very mad, but we said it's players versus environment, and we were attacking the environment.
Absolutely.
And they didn't like that, so we got banned off that server.
Damn.
I love it. Yeah, no, it would just get stale. I mean, in its current form, it'd be players versus horses and players versus animals. PvA is what it really is right now. I mean, we do have a heli, but that's every 2 to 3 days? Is that the timer on it?
That's the timer.
Yeah. And that's, I don't want to wait 2 to 3 days for the purpose of the server to come to fruition.
Yeah, it's in-game.
That's in-game.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I thought it
in-game
was
days. That makes it a lot better.
Yeah, I thought it was literal days. Okay. So that is a little bit better and a good bit more scary, actually. I thought it was real life days. But still.
You thought you were safe.
I am never safe. This is Rust. If I've learned anything, it's that.
Like I think Bugs brought up earlier, the helicopter's great, but it's a high-end encounter. It's something that players that have been grinding up and stocking up weapons and gear to actually engage, because when you get hit by that thing, you're like bleeding 80% if you don't have the right armor, and it's really intense. So I think they need something that newer players can handle. Like maybe in the woods there's a giant irradiated bear that maybe 4 or 5 of you could take down with spears and bows, and if you kill it, you're going to get a bunch of starting resources that you need, like leather and cloth and meat and whatever. So I think
maybe
if a bunch of
couple
people,
trees too.
yeah, or anything. I mean, you could have him drop a gun. He could have ate a gun. Who knows? Anything could go. It's an irradiated bear. Just it doesn't really matter. So just anything like that, and have some people like pass it and see it in the woods, just walking around and then run down and say, hey, there's this big bear down there. Can you help me kill it? I can't take it on by myself. And they would team up to kill it, and then maybe there would be a fight over who would get what at the end. But that just further makes it more interesting of a situation. And I think they should leave PvP exactly how it is. Don't restrict anybody for doing it in any capacity. Because, I mean, killing on sight when you're naked really does suck if some guy's running around with a gun and just shooting people on the beach. But, I mean, I don't know. Just move servers, and it is what it is. And just try to move on from it. Because you're going to have shitheads in any game. It doesn't really matter what it is or what the mechanics are.
Personally, I make it my goal to get geared up and then go after the people who are, like, really bad.
Yeah,
You know?
there's that too.
Yeah, that's a lot of what I would do when I was playing on our servers. You know, I'd set up near the beach and look for people who were just trying to shoot fish in a barrel and just kill nakeds, and I'd go after them, you know. And but without that dynamic, if they put something in that said the beach is a free zone or something, or even back to the point before of, you know, if someone say kills a lot of people and they get a bunch of battle scars and stuff or something, I don't even think, or a highlighted name, I don't think any of that is necessary. I think the whole, you know, the whole mix of unknown and danger and anyone can do what they want to do, I think that really is what makes it exhilarating. If you didn't have that, a lot would be lost and the game wouldn't be nearly as good.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think we've summed it up really well. I mean,
and I think, you know, one thing too, just to kind of piggyback off that, is that the ability of the community to police itself. So instead of having to have somebody's name highlighted, but have sort of the community regulate that. I mean, the fact is, I mean, most people don't like people who are going to, I mean, once you're in a big clan, you're established. I mean, it's not really a noble thing to go raid one by ones, you know, with a group of geared out people. So if people are doing that, it's nice if the community can sort of regulate that and sort of ostracize that group or go after them. So I think rather than having some artificial system in place, let the community sort of take care of it, because I know that on larger pop servers, that gets really frustrating when large groups are going around and not taking on challenges, but going after 3 guys in a house and they have 20. I mean, that's not noble. And I think that speaks to that human element. I don't think anyone can call that fair gameplay at that point, but to restrict it wouldn't be wise, but allow the community to sort of self-regulate.
I think
Definitely.
also, as much as there is like crazy stuff going on in Rust with irradiated mutant animals and whatever, as much as they want to stretch it, I think they're trying to keep Rust in the realm that it reflects things that can happen in real life, and they do that so that they can have these really interesting interactions with people take place. And I mean, that stuff can happen in real life. 20 people have definitely ganged up on one person, or a huge group of militia has definitely burned down a house that has 3 people in it.
Absolutely.
Things like this can happen and will happen, but at the same time, it allows for those interesting situations to shine above even more. Like, I've seen so many people build these compounds with giant walls with a group of like 15 people who semi know each other just to survive out here, and they have these compounds with guard posts and stuff to fight back these clans that are just ravaging the land, and that just brings Rust to life. Like, it makes it feel like it is this like savage world that people are trying to fight back these clans who basically act like warmongering militia and just ravage the countryside in some servers. So I think all of that magic and intrigue needs to stay as is, because in its own way, it's just beautiful if you step back and just look at it from a third-person perspective.
in a way, the big ravaging warmongers are kind of making themselves a PvE event.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, ultimately, what Argyle is saying too is that I think Rust taps into something on a psychological level. Like, these are all things that could happen in real life. I mean, big bullies going around, but even just one guy hatcheting into your little shed with an axe is terrifying. That would be terrifying in real life, and that's terrifying in Rust too, when you hear that hatchet going and you might not have anything to defend yourself. So I think that for me is kind of getting back to that crux of that PvP sort of experience in Rust, is there's a very clear psychological piece to it where it engages you on somewhat of a primitive level. I know it's a video game, but because of the loose sort of boundaries that Rust has, it sort of engages in you, that flight or fight response. I mean, there's been times where I've played Rust, and I've played a lot of Rust, where I had to actually take a break and I felt drained from it. You know, unlike any other game, it's not like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike, you respawn, you have all your shit with you. I mean, I think there's a really heavy psychological component to Rust that isn't talked about a lot, and maybe we don't fully understand, but I think it engages us on sort of a primitive level.
Absolutely. The shaky hands in the middle of an intense situation is like no other. You don't get, that's kind of how I judge how exciting games are, is if it's kind of ruined some other games for me, is because I'll play it and it's not exciting like it used to be because I've experienced Rust. You know, it's kind of set the bar for intensity in crazy experiences in video games. It started with DayZ, the first survival game I played, and now it's on to Rust. That's an essential part of it, just being fucking terrified, not wanting to die, not wanting to lose the stuff you've had that you've worked maybe all goddamn night for, that could be taken away in an instant. That's essential, absolutely essential, the possibility of losing everything.
Yeah, nothing gets that adrenaline going like losing all your shit or the possibility of it.
Yeah. I know. And I think
yeah,
definitely. I think a big thing for people who maybe feel like Rust is too PvP or too kill on sight, or they think something needs to be changed. I think a huge thing of it is finding the right server. We touched on it before, but finding a server that maybe isn't PvE, but that has some decent people in it, I think a lot of the official servers are, of course, going to track just your run-of-the-mill, I'm just trying to kill things and, shoot everything up. But maybe go to a community server, find a nice community vanilla server. Ours in particular is wonderful. I joined this and haven't left. I think the first day I joined was when I saw Drostin blast in chat that he was doing the live show, so maybe that's what's kept me here, but whatever, it's good. We have good people on here. They're building a medieval town on our goddamn server right now, So, find a good server, and it will exponentially increase how much you enjoy this game, and give you people to shoot if that's your thing. I'm not saying you're safe there, but it's definitely more fun.
I think Oh, sorry, go ahead, Phaedo.
That was Bugs. Yep.
Oh, Bugs.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think potentially more important than the right server is finding the right group. You know,
that's what I was gonna say.
You need the right group of people. It doesn't because the server is the server is the server. It's a place to play the game, and there are a lot of different things that go in, especially if you play modded and everything like that. There's a lot of different aspects that go in, but at the end of the day, if you get in and you're just a lone naked man on the beach, you're not going to have much fun in this game. You really need a group of people, or at least a friend. And so I think at its core, that's what's really needed here, is to find the right group of people. And then you can have a great time. And it doesn't even matter so much about where you're playing. It's who you're playing with.
Yeah. Losing all your stuff when you're alone and mostly new really sucks, but getting just destroyed with a good friend is kind of always a good time.
Yeah.
You don't really care.
Misery
about
loves
losing
company.
everything. Absolutely.
Amen.
It's more fun. Amen. Good night.
Whenever anybody asks me about a survival game that I've played and they ask, should I get this game? Is it fun? The first thing I always recommend when it's an open world survival game is play it with someone. Because these games are always much more fun if you have someone to cut the crafting time in half, cut the harvesting time in half, and have your back in these encounters that you get into. Whenever you solo queue into a survival game that's open world like Rust or DayZ or any of those games, it's always much harder, and you're always gonna be outnumbered or very untrusting. So it's gonna change your experience dramatically. And I do understand the point of view where it's, oh, I log into Rust and I just get killed whenever I get five miles away from the beach over and over again, just getting murdered. And it's like, well, people who say that, they're most of the time they're by themselves, just running out into the wilderness. And as a person that normally plays Rust solo, I definitely get shot a lot more if I'm by myself than somebody else.
I've like made it my goal, like when I was able to get a good frame rate, to be able to like be an effective solo player, but it requires a lot of changes to playstyle that a lot of people might not like. Like just like leaving stashes all over the place. Like at one point, like shortly before I met Skunkmonk, I had like 9 stashes on this one server with like beds right next to it. Like no structure, just like I would hide a chest under a rock and then put a bag near it, and like as soon as I would have enough to fill one of these with like just basic supplies, I would do that until I was just overflowing with shit and had to build a base, you know. But that's not something that's intuitive, like when you're just starting out in the game.
Yeah. A lot of people see these giant bases and, you know, even just regular decent sized houses, and that can be a hell of a task when you're on your own. So I think running up and seeing a naked and maybe not bashing his face in, but trying to talk to him and making friends with him can make you a good in-game friend and maybe a building buddy. And hey, shit, maybe you'll have a team from then on out. I think you're right. You all said it. You got to find a buddy to play with or something, at least one.
I have also. Oh, sorry.
No, you go on.
I was gonna say that I have also run into a fair amount of naked people who I talk to, like in the woods or something, and they say, "Hey, do you want to team up?" So there are those people out there, out in the wild, who genuinely do just want someone to help build a base with and survive. But then there's, I mean, you'll also run into those people who you try to talk to, they won't say anything, and then they'll just hit you with a torch.
Yeah.
So,
Did they nerf the torch yet?
They did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
dude.
God.
Yeah, dude. Very nerfed.
Thankfully, yeah. Much needed.
Yeah.
I think you know, part of it too, though, just to kind of put it out there, is that Rust it's not a game for everybody too.
Mhm.
So some people will play it and they'll write a bad review or whatever it may be, and it's like, you know, it just might not be the right game for certain types of players. I think it will always appeal to sort of a more hardcore community, people who want that level of intensity. You know, I had a small server a while ago that had 100 slots. Sometimes it would get full, other times it would even out around like 60 people. But I would struggle to maintain population on it because people would leave after they got raided or after they got killed sort of a few times or something, and they would go to another server. But you know, the same thing would happen inevitably wherever they went. It was just inherent to the game. So I thought that was interesting too. Some people would, oh, it's just the server, you know, kind of like Bugs was talking about a little bit, but it's really the core of the game. I mean, if you can't handle losing your shit, you know, and building up from sort of the ashes of what's left over the next day, then it's not going to be the game for you. So I think it's just to put it out there when we're talking about PvP, it is a hardcore game, and I don't think that's going to change. So it's not going to be a game for everyone, and that's okay. If you want to go back to Call of Duty or Counter-Strike, by all means. But if you want to play Rust, you know, don't bitch about what it is, because it is what it is, you know?
Yeah, you're right. I would not leave a bad review for Crusader Kings 2 because I don't get it.
Right.
I realize that I'm just dumb and I can't play or understand that game, you know? It's a great game. People with thousands of hours in it can attest to that. I, for one, do not understand it.
I've tried like 3 or 4 times to play Europa Universalis 4, and
Ugh.
I keep watching videos on it, and I'm like, okay, I think I can play the game this time. And then I start, and I'm like, wait, what? And then I lose.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Always. Same thing Crusader Kings 2. More or less the same game. Hard stuff, but I wouldn't leave a bad review for it.
To add on also what Phaedo said, as about this game is unforgiving and it is about building, and as much as Rust goes on and it is a survival game because you have to eat and live out in this world, Rust is at its core a building game. I usually divide survival games into 2 categories, and I call them scavenger survival games and crafting survival games. And DayZ is probably the purest scavenger survival game there is, and that game is purely about survival. You have to find what you need to get by, and if you don't, you're going to die. Rust is about going out in this world and making your own. And you need a reason to build. You're always building something in Rust. You're building weapons, gear, house, whatever. You're always building. And the potential that the other players can take what you've built and destroy what you built gives you a reason to keep building and to protect your buildings and to make more buildings, and it's all building. So if there's If there's no reason to build, it's the game falls apart. And that's why the PvP is essential to this game to flourish and continue.
Absolutely. I think, hitting on the nail on the head, though, for me is, with that aspect that people can sort of jack your shit at any point in time or get into it, always made Rust for me a more rewarding experience in that I remember, even in the early on Legacy, is getting very attached to the buildings or the bases that I was building and living in. And when I would lose them, it would be, in a sense, heartbreaking. You'd feel like kind of really like a punch in the gut. And I think we probably all can speak to that. But I think Rust, with great risk comes great reward. So if it was a case where you could build your base and you had a building privilege, I mean, we kind of do have that in a sense. But if you had a zone around your base where no one could harm it or something, that would totally break for me the game.
Yeah.
But I think that the inherent aspect of being able to lose everything makes it more valuable. I don't know, Bugs. What do you think about that?
I agree. I mean, I love how, Argyle, you put it. It's a building game, because it is. You got to build your life in this game, and that is building a base. It's fortifying it. It's protecting it, and at the end of the day, if it was all just sunshine and moonbeams and flowers, it would be boring as shit. Because it would be just a building simulation. But the thing that I saw about this game back in Legacy when I first looked at it, and I think is still true today, is that this game creates a context in which I've never seen. I've been playing games for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything quite like it. It just creates this world where you start with nothing, and then you gather stuff over time, and you could die at any point. You could lose it all at any point. But it's that no game has captivated me. Like, it kept me up at night. I started playing Legacy with my wife, and one night, I'll never forget, she was out harvesting, and someone shot her with an Ioka in the face and took her stuff. She was up all night long. She's been a gamer for years and years too. But she was up all night long, just upset because she trusted that motherfucker, and then that motherfucker killed her. And then me, I'm like, I'm gonna stay online. I'm gonna find out where that motherfucker lives.
Yep.
He killed my wife with an Ioka. No, what other game has given you that? I don't know. For me, none.
Absolutely. There's people I'm seeing
God.
who literally take shift work as almost being security guards, like unpaid security work, just to stay up on their bases, stay in those towers.
I do security work for a living, and if I have a member in the clan and they ask me to do fucking security shifts, I will tell them to fuck right off. I do that 8 hours a day. I'm not going to do that 8 hours a day in a video game.
But it boggles my mind what these factions do. In running these servers, we got factions on every server that we run, and they all have their own thing, and they take shifts. They've got warning systems. They've got, on a fresh wipe, they've got game plans for exactly who does what. I mean, it's really, really fascinating what people create out of this seemingly nothingness. It's just this open sandbox thing, and then people create whatever calls them into action, and that's really that's beautiful. That's game beauty in my mind.
They sometimes trade those jobs, though, for shelter and resources that these compounds and these factions offer. I've seen people saying that if you want to live here, you have to do so and so, and if you don't, then you're not going to be here. It's either you're gathering or you're helping protect this base. So I've definitely seen evidence of that out here.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great. I love that too. Wood bitches,
Some
Here's
servers
hatchet,
have
come
slave
back.
trades. I mean, I think Phaedo, there was a slave trade on your server.
Yeah, I was trying to incite a rebellion. I was saying, guys, wouldn't it be better if you unionize? And it was a very divisive term. And then, one guy came up and he was like, I don't agree with the term slave. I'm like, why does your this guy's name say slave master? But it was this interesting dialogue that was occurring about something deeper than the game, but about this notion of slavery. Well, I'm not a slave, I'm a worker. I said, but this guy's called the slave master, who has, technically command over you. So we got in this really kind of more of an existential dialogue about it. And that, again, is part of the beauty of the game. Like, it really is a beautiful game. Like Bug said, it's hard to define. I mean, I feel like, even doing some of the videos, like the raid cams and everything, it shows such a small part of the game, and people think, oh, that's like Call of Duty. That's like, Battlefield or something. It's not. It's much deeper than that. It's a very hard game to define. But absolutely, it's some kind of rambling, but it's something else, and I think it's a hard. It's just that you gotta really appreciate it on a certain level and see sort of some of the beauty that's not defined.
My favorite interaction that I've ever seen in Rust. This is back in Legacy. I was fairly new to the game. I just respawned. I'm trying to meet up with my brother. It's dark out, and I see some two torches in the distance, and I'm like, oh fuck! So I hide in a bush, right? And these two naked guys run past. One of them's chasing the other, just yelling, "You don't know me! You don't know what I'm gonna do!" As he's swinging his torch at the guy, and I lost my shit laughing. I don't know why I found it so funny, but
Yeah.
It's just in my mind a huge social experiment. I mean, that's what the game is.
Yes.
And that is limitless. You know?
Yeah. And stuff like this happens organically. Like, yeah, you've got the big clans that'll get together with a game plan, build a big base, but sometimes communities just kind of organically happen. Like, I can't remember where I was playing or what server it was. It was a long time ago, but I was just running around, and there was this guy with the house, and I was just gathering resources. He came out and was friendly. I was like, I'm thinking about building somewhere around here. He's like, oh, that's cool, dude. You can build over there. We can kind of like protect each other's stuff. And so I did, and then another guy came, and we just kind of organically had this little, we called it a neighborhood, a little neighborhood popped up in this valley back in the day. And I love that. Like, we didn't plan it. We didn't say, all right, we're going to build a neighborhood. We just kind of all realized, hey, everyone here is friendly. We can all kind of help and protect each other. This is good. Let's make this a thing. Everyone settle here. And that stuff can just happen. It's not a scripted game mechanic, or if you gather this much this and craft this item, you can then build a neighborhood. It's you go and you meet a person, and that person's personality clicks with yours. You've made a friend. You have a friend in game, someone you can trust. You can build a neighborhood, build around each other. And we've said it multiple times throughout this session, but that doesn't really happen in a lot of games until the survival genre really came to the forefront. That didn't happen many places, and it just gives you a certain type of feeling, and it's a good feeling.
Was
Just
that player?
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Argyle. It's just that player-driven narrative. I think it's it's not. There's not fetch quests. There's not a lot of structure in terms of what you're told to do. But that's where the magic happens. That's where the stories are told. I mean, that's for me. Rust is one of those games you log in and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to log in for 5 minutes. I tell my fiance this. I'm going to log in for 5 minutes, and then you log in and you realize something bigger is going on and you get caught up in it. But it's that emergent gameplay and that ability to define your experience by not what you think it's going to be, but by what the other players in the world sort of dictate is just so interesting.
I think of just an interesting thing that I've run into with that community just springing out of nowhere was I think I was playing on Rustafied, and I don't remember which one, but there was a guy who just built a house with open windows, and he called it the food bank, and he was giving out food to people who needed it, and then eventually it just evolved into a town because people were building around because he was keeping them alive, and they wanted to be near him. So they would build a community, and eventually it became the food bank town. But once it became a community, and the guy who started the food bank, he started to become like an overlord, and he wouldn't let people leave the town, and he started putting them to work protecting the town and making them guards.
What
and
the fuck?
It started to become a little devious, but it was such an interesting situation how this guy who just started as something very charitable soon became like a king to these people, and they did what he wanted because he had control of the town.
And that mimics things that happen in the real world, like people who become part of these big charities or organizations. Absolute power corrupts, they say. And that's why I think Rust is so beautiful, because it does allow you to sort of experience human behavior. I think it's a human behavior simulator in many ways too.
Mm-hmm.
That's brilliant.
Speaking of other games, Argyle, you've been playing a lot of other games with mechanics in common with Rust, namely that you can kill anybody anytime. Is there anything that you could bring back from those games to compare to Rust?
I think the one that's probably the closest is probably but um, Reign of Kings has more issues at its core, mostly with its development team. But I think the idea of starting from nothing and building up is there within Reign of Kings. The only thing that is different is it gives you the ability to already have a preset leader, but the throne is always up for grabs. So it adds that extra element. Like if Rust had a president or a king, it would be like that. But I don't know. It's a good thing and it's also a bad thing because I think there's more potential for a lot more interesting interactions to happen within Rust because there is no designated leader of the world, and I think it does kind of minimalize it. But it's there. It's definitely present in other games that happens. There's like those DayZ mods as well. I think any game has an open world survival element with PvP enabled, and the ability to build a house will have these core elements that Rust has. But I think Rust just has so many things in place that make it a lot more interesting. Like they have these, it has such a deep building mechanics with you can build on different angles and planes, and it has multiple levels of buildings and walls and all these kinds of guns and weapons, and like Phaedo said earlier, that you start out naked and you're basically innocent in this harsh world. I think Rust hits a lot of key notes, either accidentally or purposefully, that just adds to the experience a lot more. And I'm not trying to say that like biasedly about Rust, but I think they do it well.
Knowing that Gary Newman is the head of Face Punch tells me a lot of it might be an accident.
It could be.
Well,
I want to deter from Gary, but
I wouldn't sell him short though. I think no, I think that. I mean, we don't really know, right? But it seems like some of the design decisions they have in there are very progressive too. Assigning race, randomly to people, gender when it comes about, the fact that you're actually naked and your genitals are hanging out is just those are really. I don't think it was all these things happen sort of by.
No.
When
I
we start,
was mainly referencing when Gary made Gary's mod, like its success was completely kind of accidental. He just made a mod and all of a sudden millions of people had downloaded the mod. Then Valve let him sell the mod, and it sold millions and millions of copies, still selling to this day.
I think this is his chance more to make something what he really envisions, whatever that is,
Yeah, and I think when we get into, what's the backstory, frankly, I don't think Gary has a backstory of there was this guy and then this happened and then this happened. And, I think at the end of the day, I think what Gary is passionate about is creating a sandbox environment that has some kick-ass fucking gameplay where his mind is really focused at. And I really think that with what he learned from Gary's mod and what he's done with Gary's mod, and that's obviously a huge success. I think he's got, and then the great part is we've got Marino, we've got Helk, who this is actually this game was his brainchild of sorts, and it kind of jived with what Gary was thinking, and so when we look at where it's going and what it's going to be, I don't think anything is going to change really drastically. I think we're going to just see a lot of great additions to the gameplay and enhancements to the gameplay that really just make it more prolonged and something that people can do. Gary's vision is that people can have a server that lasts 6 months. And I think he really wants to see what happens when people get together and they build a society on a given map and how that plays out over the course of months.
I want to see that too. I got a feeling it's going to become Rust factions, but more organic. I think people are going to cut away pieces of the land and say, this is mine. And if those red shirt guys come over here, I'm going to kill them because we're the blue shirt guys. I got a feeling that's exactly how it's going to go down. But it's going to be amazing, every minute of it.
I honestly can't wait for all those new what they call dungeon prefabs to come into the game. You know, all the different types of little settlements and structures and towns and shit. Like, I really want to see the world around us populated with more interesting structures.
Yeah, I think, that's really something that we're all waiting for. And we've seen things, in previous dev blogs early on about more intricate cave systems and all these things that we're like, yeah, super stoked for. But to me, Rust is one of those games too that I feel as though the development team is in somewhat limited by Unity. It's their vision of Rust is so grand and it's so much larger than the engine. And I think the engine is what holds them back oftentimes, so I'm really excited to see where it goes, but I see a lot of sort of the frustration being sort of being limited to what Unity can handle at this point with the entity counts and then with the cave systems. Can we actually go underground or not? Will it support that? So I think it's hard to really, I think, rein the scope of Rust into Unity, and Rust might be one of those games that is always evolving and always iterating, and it's just something that never goes away. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I hope, and I think what it's going to require though is patience. You know, because Unity is in beta, Unity 5 is in beta, and it's behind schedule, admittedly, by the Unity team, and so they're working as much as they can. But we are going to constantly, and one of the things I love about Rust and the Face Punch team is they constantly kind of push the threshold of what's possible in the game, and sometimes that backfires. Sometimes it's not ideal, especially for certain play types. But for instance, right now we've got a 250 slot server that basically needs to wipe not necessarily every week, but every 10 days, less than 14 days, because we hit this collider limit. But then we look at what Andre's been focusing on for the past week or so, and they're getting beyond that collider limit. So that's no longer a limitation for the game and can prolong servers. So, but it is going to be this ebb and flow and this constant kind of, waiting for Unity and the engine to get in place and then pushing it again and then waiting to get in place. And I do see that lasting years from now, though. I'm curious to see when they're going to announce. I mean, we're still in alpha. I mean, when are we going to be beta? When's there going to be a full release? I mean, that could be years from now. And to me, that's exciting. That's what makes this. That's what keeps me coming back every day.
And I don't see why it needs to end either. I mean, something, like Rust is something that could continue to evolve as technology evolves. I mean, it's just the concept. So I agree completely.
I mean, look how much it's changed since Legacy. I mean, like if you look back at how Legacy functioned, and how it is now, because there was a lot of mixed feelings when it was Rust experimental and coming out of that cocoon to what it is now. Legacy seems like almost an entirely different game at this point. Like, even if you think about how people functioned in Legacy, since the map was smaller and there was only a couple types of buildings, it seemed like a smaller community than what you can accomplish now. Like, even you guys were saying, you were recalling like anecdotes about finding people who killed your friends, who killed you, and hunt them down. And that's not that easy to do in nowadays Rust. I mean, if somebody kills me, unless I know their name, I don't think I could find them. But that's I feel like that's a good thing that the map is bigger and more expansive, because it leads to more people doing more interesting things all over the map and building these colonies and compounds and structures and clan strongholds. So
and trailer parks.
And trailer parks and anything. I think it just adds for more. More is better when it comes to Rust.
Yeah. And back to what Phaedo said about it being early access and being what everyone was saying about it being built and constantly improved on and everything. In this instance, I love it. I love being a part of the early access thing. I know a lot of people like to shit on early access games, and that's because some games have really maybe not the best developers, or developers who don't have the time or the ability to put every day of their life into working on their game. But we have good developers who are constantly working, always being in tune with the community, talking to us, getting feedback on things that they're adding, updating every week until very recently, now going to a 2-week schedule, which I fully support. If that means they have more time to work on the things and more, less broken things when they do release them. I enjoy being a part of it and seeing it change. I feel like if it ever actually launches, it'll feel weird, like it'll feel like part of the game is missing. I'm not getting weekly broken updates. Like this is weird.
When it comes to these games that are constantly being developed, I don't think the typical full release style of games really means much at all. I'll use Kerbal Space Program as an example. That was a game that I think they started development in 2011 and came into a full release either earlier this year or later last year. And the changes between their alpha/beta and early release, they pushed out a big update for that last update, but it didn't change a whole lot about the game, and they're still constantly adding to it. So I think as this early access thing goes on, our notion of game development will change a lot. And failed early access games are basically the games that never got a full release in the first place, because there's a history of countless games that were developed partly or almost all the way, but just got shut down, like Ultima Online 2, for example.
Yeah, I think, the whole concept of being paying for an alpha test to be an alpha tester, which is what we are in Rust right now. We are players, but we are essentially alpha testers for Gary. And buying into that concept, for some people it turns them off. For me, it's exciting to be part of something that's evolving every other week, every day. So that's something that's really cool. I can remember as a kid, looking at like these PC Gamer magazines at footage of Ultima or pages of Ultima Online and saying, I wish I could play that. But at that point, it was a very much a gilded, closed thing that was only open to developers. But to be part of that now is a really awesome experience. And I don't think a game like Rust could come out without having an alpha test like this, where there were hundreds of thousands of people pushing it to its limits, because there's so many systems involved and so many different ways to play it. But I have to run, guys. It was a pleasure being in here with you guys. I'll talk to you all soon. Okay.
All right. Take it
Thanks,
easy,
man.
Phaedo.
See you later.
Later, guys.
Thanks, Phaedo.
Yeah.
And
User
yeah, I
disconnected
actually
from
got to
your
run
channel.
too. I've got a meeting in 2 minutes. We're starting a charity event at the end. Argyle, I mentioned it to you earlier.
Right.
On October 24th, we're going to be doing a 12-hour charity event. It's going to be a streaming event for raising funds for Child's Play, and we're going to do a bunch of different Rust gameplay types and have a bunch of different streamers on there, and ideally even get some interviews with the devs and some raffle giveaways and stuff like that.
Very cool.